Hey guys, it's Gary. I'm back with another one of my short videos. Um, Man, I know I got to get to that Paul Desmond thing and Cal Jader that I promised, but you know, whatever. They're marathon sessions, and as you may recall, I already recorded them, and then the sound didn't come out. So it's like basically I've done them twice already, and they didn't come out, and I'm just so hesitant to do it a third time. You know, so. Getting back to what probably will be the last in terms, certainly in terms of vinyl, um, is the obscurities. And I had one of these that I'm about to show in mind. And when I went to the stack that it was in, I came across a bunch of others. And these, it's questionable with the VC whether or not these are going to really be obscurities. I did know there's one label I don't know anything about, but I have 5 albums here. And if you were around in the day when these came out, late 70s, early 80s, early to mid 80s, you probably saw them in the racks in the jazz area, or at least most of these, perhaps. So I don't know if they're really obscure. So I'm kind of hedging my bets here by showing 5 of them and figuring that at least 1 or 2 is probably going to be fairly obscure, maybe fairly rare because the labels don't exist anymore. And I'm not tempting fate. I'm not going to play anything in the background. As a matter of fact, I haven't even played these records in over 25 years. I do remember certain aspects of them. The first one is James Blood Ulmer, Tales of Captain Black, which turns out to be his first solo album. Still in really good condition. This is the kind of funky harmonic concept of Ornette Coleman. Ornette Coleman plays alto saxophone on here. James Blood plays electric guitar. Jamaluddin Takuma plays electric bass. And Leonardo Coleman, Ornette's son, plays drums. So it's a quartet, all original compositions by James Blood Ulmer. Actually, here he's just... this is his first album. He's only credited as James Blood on this album, but I'm pretty sure later albums came out as James Blood Ulmer, and it was basically a new concept. And it was produced by Ornette Coleman, recorded in one day, December 5th, 1978, and released shortly after. And this is on the excellent and very, very, very unfortunately short-lived Artist's House label out of New York. Artist's House always did. Gee, I only have maybe 2 or 3 Artist's House. Didn't last long. I think Ornette Coleman had something to do with the label because the only other Artist's House I have is the excellent Soap Suds album that I believe I showed. That is a duet, live duet essentially in the studio of Ornette Coleman and Charlie Haden on bass. That's probably Ornette's quietest album, I think. And actually, oddly enough, the first Ornette album I bought, I wanted to get something by Ornette, and that happened to be a new release at the time. That was on Artist's House. And unfortunately, didn't get reissued. Artist's House went kaput and did not last too long, which is really sad. And I understand that the Soap Suds album, at the very least, did get a re-release, but on CD, which I really want, but that also went out of print. I don't know who re-released it because Artist's House was not in business anymore. Artist's House, oh man, I haven't taken this off for so long. I can't even get this. I can't even get the shrink wrap off of here. I never get it back on again. It's a gatefold. It opens up. I'm not sure what it opens up to. It's been that many years. To be honest, I wasn't crazy about the album. I kind of knew what I was getting into with the harmonics concept, and it was kind of like a funky acidy psychedelic thing. I didn't really dig it, but it was new and it was interesting, and I wanted to find out about it. And the Artist's House was just an awesome label in terms of information. And I got one of these also. They also included these, I guess it's almost like an 8.5 by 11 booklet with all of their releases, with information on that specific release. So it's not the same booklet stuck in all of these. Here's the credits of the album, when it was recorded, technical information, even the type of tape recorders they used, the microphones, the brand of guitars and bass and alto saxophone, and even some of the actual music. Pretty cool. They did this. They did this in every artist's house that I've seen. Some more music from the album, and this is an explanation, kind of James Blood Harmonic Guitar Clef. Don't ask me; I don't understand it. But the artist's house, man, did they do quality? I mean, considering that they couldn't have been making much money off of these releases, you know. Ornette Coleman, a duet album with Charlie Haden, which, you know, a lot of jazz fans would savor, certainly. It's a great album, but I don't know how many copies it sells in the end. And this is even more obscure. And here's a whole biography history of James Blood Ulmer. In the booklet, at the time, starting, he was born in 1942, and then the biography here picks up in 1949 and goes to 1979, mentioning recording his first records for Artist House, Tales of Captain Black. So that's as far as that goes. And on the back here, says the recordings from Artist House may be purchased by mail or phone for $7 each. Postage and handling included, if you can imagine. So there's no doubt this is 1979. Artist House, New York. Here's a listing for anybody interested on some of this stuff. An Ornette Coleman album, Body Meta, which I remember seeing, and I think may have been reissued. A Paul Desmond album, which I did not realize. Oddly enough, here I am putting off doing my Paul Desmond video, and something's prodding me saying, you better do it. Paul Desmond did one for Artist House. I did not know that. Thad Jones and Mel Lewis did an album. Charlie Haden with Hampton Hawes, the piano player, so a bass and piano. I was totally unaware of this. Jim Hall and Red Mitchell, the bassist, made a duet album. That's nice. Ornette Coleman and Charlie Haden, Soap Suds, which I mentioned. Dave Liebman did an album, Pendulum. Andrew Hill did an album. And Wayman Reed. And that's like about the first 10. They don't list the first 10 of the Artist's House albums. I don't know how many they had. I'm not sure if this has been reissued. What did I pay for it? $5.99 new. Claiming that the list price was $8.98, yet you can order it by mail for $7 new, by the way, including postage. Unbelievable. Nothing I would get rid of, even though I didn't care for the music. It's one of those things that the concept was fairly important, I guess. A new idea, maybe. And so I wanted to be kind of up with it. Another label that doesn't exist. Electra Musician. Now, this is a label from very late 70s, a little bit into the 80s. This is from 1982. This may be one of the more well-known ones out of the small batch I have here, by Chico Freeman, Tradition in Transition. And I want to say, now that I think about that, I wonder if Chris Cole showed this. He may have. Or something like it. I seem to recall somebody showing a Chico Freeman. I bought this because, well, by the way, Bruce Lundvall, I'm doing this totally by memory, was a bigwig in, I think it was Asylum Records, who was always a jazz fanatic. And pretty much always had a jazz branch in whatever record label he was a part of. And I believe that this Electra Musician was a label that was started by him. And this was strictly as a jazz label. And unfortunately, it didn't last long, and Bruce Lundvall got swept up by, another major label, probably shortly afterwards. The reason I bought this was I was a big fan of Jack DeJohnette and just about anything he did. And at one point, Chico Freeman was a member of Jack DeJohnette's special edition. And it might have been roughly around this time. And even though I'm not a huge fan of multi-horn bands, I wanted to check it out. So who plays on here? Chico plays tenor saxophone, bass clarinet, and flute. And Wallace Roney plays trumpet on here. Interesting choice, because I always thought Wallace Roney was a bit more of a traditionalist, and Chico Freeman kind of has one foot more in the free jazz thing. Clyde Kreiner on piano. There's even one track that's just a piano and drums duet. I'm pretty sure this never came out on CD because the label went kaput. Even though this is from '82, CDs were about another 4 years away. I'm sure the label was gone by the time the CDs came out. So I want to say this probably wasn't released on CD. Would be a good one to have on CD. Looking at it now, I really want to hear it again. Clyde Kreiner on piano, Cecil McBee on bass, Billy Hart on drums, and Jack DeJohnette on drums and piano. And that was probably the selling point for me. I love Billy Hart, but the fact that Jack plays on it as well on drums and the piano really kind of said, I'm going to pick that up. So Jack plays drums on at least 3 tracks. And he plays piano on other tracks. The print is very small. But this might be an album that people in VC have. And I don't know why. I'm going to say that. But Chico Freeman, now I really want to hear this again. And I haven't played this for years. And I don't think that came out of CD. On CD, and here's the old Elektra Musician, because this was part of the Elektra label, showing you some of their releases. Oh, I have that Material album, by the way, too. They came out with a Chick Corea album that actually, I'm not a big fan of Chick Corea. They have, I believe I'm doing this from memory, it's called Again and Again, which was an interesting album of, one of the ones that I'm most interested in by Chick, actually. And that did come out on CD years later. I ended up, and went out of print very quick, and I ended up buying a used copy. And that, again, was one of the very first or second CD I think I ever bought used was Chick Corea's Again and Again because I couldn't get it new. An interesting band, electric keyboards. I remember Don Elias on percussion, Steve Kajula on flute, I believe was part of his band at the time, and a bass player whose name I don't recall, and a drummer whose name I don't recall. But I remember really liking, I'm a fan of Don Elias anyway, the late Don Elias on percussion. And that album was on Elektra Musician. So at that point, Chick was recording for ECM, Elektra Musician, possibly even another major label. That would have been about 82. Just brought that back, that memory. Here's one. I don't know what made me buy this. Michael Gregory Jackson was a guy I had absolutely no familiarity with. This is on Paul Bly's Improvising Artists. This was recorded in one day in New York City, May 5th, 1978. This is one of the Improvising Artists albums, produced by Paul Bly. And I think the thing that made me buy it was most of these tracks are duo tracks, 2 musicians, which I really love that setting. And the fact that Michael Gregory Jackson is somebody I know nothing about apart from having this one album, is largely a guitarist in an area that, there's so many albums I have by, pianists and horn players, and those kind of instruments. So it's a lot of solo tracks, actually. This is another one. I got to put this on. Michael Gregory Jackson does have one guest on here, and that's Oliver Lake. Now, Oliver Lake I knew, the horn player. But it looks like, most of the tracks really are solo Michael Gregory Jackson tracks where he plays electric guitar or acoustic guitar. He actually does some reciting, a poem on one brief track, which has Oliver Lake playing saxophone, alto saxophone along with. And on one track, Jackson plays totally solo the Guatemalan marimba. Looking at this now, I want to hear it again, And I shouldn't do this because sometimes I pull these albums and I record these videos and then I play the music and then I think, oh my God, there's so much I could talk about. But, if any of these are really fantastic, I might end up doing a part 2, like, okay, I listened to these and here's what I think. But I kind of wanted to show these as obscurities anyway. There's an acoustic guitar track on here, with Jackson playing acoustic guitar, Oliver Lake playing flute, an electric guitar and alto saxophone duet. Jackson also plays drums and percussion on one track, with soprano saxophone by Oliver Lake. This is just sounding better and better the more I read. Because I bought this crap, 30-something years ago, and I haven't listened to it since. And there's the last track on here, something called Spirit, that has Michael Gregory Jackson just playing bamboo flute and gongs. And improvising artists, recorded in one day, May 5th, 1978. And I know there's a whole group of people, myself included, that being Paul Bley fans, and that know a bit about his history, are familiar with this late 70s label that Paul had briefly, and are fans of just about anything because not a lot of music came out on the label. And I just found this insert on here in the album. I didn't even know it was in there. So it looks like there's a poem in there. Which may be the one that he recites on the album. Didn't even realize that was in there. And I have a few of I got a bunch of the improvising artist stuff on CD. I do have a few vinyls. I don't really remember the label being this color before. Improvising artists, interesting, huh? So that's a rarity because I don't know anything, and I'm gonna, maybe I should have done more preparation here. I may end up coming back, and doing a review on all of these albums that I haven't played in 30 years. Simply because I'm looking at them and they sound so damn interesting now. I can see why I bought them. I don't know anything about Michael Gregory Jackson. I don't even know if he's still around. Here's another obscure label. Inner City Records, which I don't think are around anymore. Maybe not so obscure. They were certainly very well distributed here in New Jersey on the East Coast. I remember seeing a lot of Inner City Records in the bins. But here's one that I was only slightly familiar with one of the musicians involved, but I like the lineup instrumentally. Again, it's a duet. It's bassist David Friesen, who I'm slightly familiar with, and John Stowell, who is a guitarist that I wasn't familiar with at all. And this is something called Other Mansions. This could easily, now I remember this album, even though I haven't played it in over 25 years. This is from, the liner notes were written in February 1980. And I don't know if there's recording information on here. Yeah, recorded in Eugene, Oregon, November 1979. And again, it's a duet. I like it. I like the concept of electric guitar and upright bass, with no third drummer, so it's not really, it's a bit more spacious. David Friesen plays upright bass. He also plays some piano on here, some light percussion and bamboo flute, and John Stowell plays 6 and 12 string guitars, mandolin, piano, African thumb piano, not regular piano, and does some light percussion as well. And David Friesen, I do have some things on CD. I don't have this. I remember liking this one a lot. Inner City, the one thing I didn't care about Inner City was most of the Inner City albums that I have were the recorded sound was pretty awful. They didn't have the best engineers. It's almost like they were using, like an engineer that was used to recording electric rock bands, and he threw all these acoustic instruments at them, and they didn't know how to record them. That's the impression I always got. That Charlie Mariano thing on Inner City, which I was so excited when I saw it in the stores. It's got Trilok Gurtu on percussion, upright bass, piano, a pretty big band, and the sound was just so awful. And the drum kit sounds like the guy's banging on cardboard boxes. Very disappointed. This one, probably from my memory, is a bit better because of the limited instrumentation. But Other Mansions, this from what I remember, this could have been an ECN. I bought this at Sam Goody for $4.99. Holy crap! And that was new. These are all new. This is one I think I looked at a bunch of times in the racks, and other stuff kept on taking precedence. And finally, one day when I went to the store, there was really little else there, and I thought I'm going to finally pick this one up. Now again, I'm going to probably end up listening to all of these, and end up probably doing a part 2 video maybe if there's anything really earth-shattering. Looks like there could be. Here's one that this is the one that I was thinking of when I was going to make the video, because I think this is pretty obscure. I don't recall how I heard this band, but I believe it was on college or university radio station out of New York City, possibly out of Jersey, but most of the stations I picked up were out of New York City. Probably very late at night, and a band called Say What. I'm pretty sure this was looking at that cover, I'm pretty sure this was a self-released thing. The record label out of New York is called Listen Close Records. Not a label I'd ever heard of or seen anything else by. And I want to say it was probably something that was created by this band to release their stuff. And I think I heard these guys, like I said, on the radio, on a late night thing, like physically go into the studio. So what it is, it's not incredibly well recorded either. This has a recorded September 1982. It was a band kind of built around 2 acoustic guitarists. Matt Ballitsaris on 12-string guitar, and John Wunsch, Wunsch, on classical guitar. So it's almost like, I thought ECM right away. I thought Ralph Towner right away. Oregon. I'd say it's like an easier to get into. Like Oregon's music can be incredibly complex and difficult at times. I always thought this was a prettier version of Oregon at the time that this came out, which was just a little bit before the Windham Hill stuff started coming out. Now I would say it's a cross between the more accessible Oregon stuff and like a Windham Hill band. These guys could have easily been a Windham Hill band. Now here there's additional musicians. There's 2 guitarists. There's also Jeff Berman on vibraphones, who plays a little bit of percussion on one track. A guy named Dave Dunaway on bass, and 2 different drummers that alternate on tracks. So it sounds like they probably didn't have a regular drummer in the band at the time this was recorded. A guy named Chip White plays drums on some tracks, and Ralph Robinson plays drums on the other tracks. Nice, very easy to listen to, nothing difficult. 2 acoustic guitarists, 1 nylon string, 1 steel string. I think they recorded something else years later, and I seem to remember years later seeing an ad for a concert that they were giving, that the band kept in name, actually, only, probably, because I want to say, I believe that it was down to just the 2 guitarists without all the guys in the rhythm section. So the vibraphone player was gone, the bassist was gone, there were no drummers involved. And I think that was a concert date that I saw an ad for with just the 2 guitarists. It may have been a record release, but I want to say that I think it's, it was a concert. So they kind of were around for a few years, knocking around. I don't know if they recorded anything else, though. And Yeah, out of New York. They had their booking information. With booking information, they have a phone number here. I always wonder who you would get. If you call these old numbers from these old records from 30 years ago. So a lot of when I first pulled those out, I was like, yeah, this is probably pretty obscure. And at first it was like, I don't know if I really want to hear these again. Now that I've done the video and I'm talking about these and I'm looking at the instrumentation, I literally want to hear every single one of them. So they may end up getting played, and if they do, I may end up doing a part two. And I took a bit of chance. I got 5 vinyls here, and I want to bet if somebody out in the VC sees this and has anything, I'm gonna take a wild guess. It's probably gonna be Chico Freeman, maybe the James Blood Ulmer disc. The others probably not so much. And if you know anything about these musicians, um, especially Michael Gregory Jackson, I'll look up because I don't even know if he's around anymore. Yeah, I want to go hear these now. So that's my next obscurities. Offhand, I don't really know if I have any other vinyl that's kind of in this ballpark. Certainly CDs. But yeah, I thought I'd throw 5 of them at you and do a slightly longer video. And so that's it, folks. You got anything to add to the thread? I'd love to see it. Love to see people's videos on this subject, this type of thing. You know anything about these musicians? Feel free to let me know. Leave a comment, whatever. And I'll be listening to these and potentially coming back and doing a video if anything really, really hits home on these. So, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you're having a great week, and I'll be back soon.